Before we get underway, people, it's of course a big weekend of championship action coming up, but the biggest game of the weekend, and possibly the entire season for that matter, is coming up after the weekend. It's Sheffield United versus Leeds United on Monday night. Second v first. It's a proper how's your mother. It doesn't get any bigger than this. And once again, we'll be going live on the Second Tier YouTube channel straight after that game to give you our reaction. So make sure you join us then for that. We'll be reading out your comments so you can be involved in the conversation as well. And once again, we'll also be giving away a Leeds United or Sheffield United shirt for one lucky viewer of that live stream. So make sure you get involved. That's Monday night, straight after Sheffield United v Leeds on the Second Tier YouTube channel. Subscribe now and we'll see you then for that. I am buzzing for that game, Peachy.
Oh, it's a big one. It's a doozy. And yeah, we had a big one last week with Sunderland and Leeds. Yeah, it just get bigger. Season goes on, the games wind down, and the stakes get higher. It's just the championship, baby, and we can't wait.
The stakes don't get much higher than this one, do they? This is, as I say, probably the biggest game of the season so far. So make sure you stay tuned with us for that, ladies and gents, because it's going to be an absolute cracker. But looking ahead to this weekend, we'll begin with our game of the weekend. It's the Friday night clash between Burnley and Sheffield Wednesday at Turf Moor. Burnley are your 3-4 favourites to win this one with SBK. A Wednesday win is 5-1. The draw is 5-2. And the big question is, Justin, what derby is this?
The Ginger Prince is a James O'Connor derby.
Oh, how could you get this wrong, Justin? There's only one winner here. It's the Ross Wallace derby. Come on. The man responsible for the greatest bit of shithousery in championship history when he grabbed the piece of paper out of a Huddersfield player's hands so he could read it because it had tactical instructions on it. I love that video so much.
Yeah, it is a classic. It is a classic. It's one of them you got to stop and watch every time you see it on a timeline. And shithousery or very, very intelligent footballering, if you like.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if your tactics are out in front of you, you grab them, you do it. We don't see it often enough. We don't see tactics dished out on pieces of paper anymore. It's a travesty.
No, it is a travesty. You're absolutely right. But maybe it's because they saw Ross Wallace and he changed the game from that point on so that he couldn't just nick it out of players' hands while they're reading it. But look, Justin, this is a fascinating clash because it's almost a meeting of one of the most entertaining sides to watch in the Championship against the most boring side to watch in the Championship. The very enjoyable force meeting the incredibly dull object.
I don't know. I feel like it is really harsh to be describing Burnley as boring. I know there's a lot of 0-0 draws. There's a lot of placidness. I know. I'm aware of all of that. But I think you've got to look at the last few games, especially. There's a lot of, I think, boring bias thrown at Burnley because of their ability to not put teams away as comfortably as other sides in the division. And now I think if you look at Sheffield Wednesday and the chaos they bring to games, it's beautiful, isn't it? It's great. It's what the Championship is made of. Burnley are just very conservative. You know, they're very sort of top buttoned, done up, isn't it? You know, they're not overexerting themselves. You know, it comes across as a bit of posh football. You know, you get my point. Very, very up to do, very top button up, as I say. You know, they're not overexerting themselves. It's just very, very conservative. And yes, it may come across as boring, but it's getting results. And I know they do need to start turning those draws into wins to keep pace with the top two. But I do find it a bit harsh to be calling Burnley boring all the time because there is beauty in boring. You
literally called them boring like 3 weeks ago.
I know, but you do come around to the idea that actually maybe their football is very, very effective, and effective football, whilst isn't as entertaining as chaos, you know, effective football does get you up the division, and ultimately that's the aim, isn't it? And like I said, there is beauty in boring. I'm boring. I'm beautiful.
But you literally called them boring 3 weeks ago, and now you've completely changed your tune. It's very confusing.
I'm just making a counterpoint to label them boring all the time because I imagine Burnley fans will get sick of them being called boring. And
Burnley fans are probably the ones saying they're boring. they're the ones having to watch it every week, Justin. They probably know fully well that they're boring. But look, they are boring. But at the same time, you have to praise that defensive record of Burnley's, don't you? We've spoken about it a million times now already, but it just keeps breaking championship records. It is absolutely incredible. They've now gone 1,000 minutes without conceding a league goal. They're the first club in championship history to do that. Justin, they haven't let in a goal in the league since Christmas. Christmas was ages ago. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? We've never seen anything like this. And I don't think we'll ever see anything like this ever again.
Yeah, it's been 2 paydays since Christmas. So, a long time ago. But 12 clean sheets in a row now, isn't it? It's just freakishly good. Impressively so as well. And I did see a stat on social media looking at sort of defenders' defensive contributions, and looked into Maxime Esteve a little bit. And as an example, and he's not having to do much defending, which is crazy. I know he's been one of the best defenders in the division, but he's just not having to do a lot of it, which is probably why his numbers are so good. But what it does, it just highlights the qualities of this Burnley team, because if your defenders aren't having to do much defending, how good are they out of possession to make sure that James Trafford doesn't face too many shots? Yeah, they've only faced 22 shots on targets since they last conceded a goal. That's incredible. And again, that just points the spotlight on how good this team are out of possession as a unit. Defenders aren't needing to defend, goalkeepers not needing to save. It's just absurd. It's comfortable. And as I say, yes, it might come across as boring, but I think that isn't boring. I think you've got to look at a game a very different way, I think, to really, really hone in on the quality that Burnley are producing at the moment.
More clean sheets than the hotel, isn't it? that is Burnley right now. And you mentioned how good they are out of possession. I think what's equally impressive is how good they are in possession, because I think that is going a long way to maintaining this ridiculous defensive record, because they hold on to the ball so well, but they don't overexert themselves. And that's one of the reasons why it is so hard to break down this Burnley team. And no one's managed to break them down since bloody Christmas, which is just insane. And look, it is quite insane how they're not in the top 2, despite their defensive record being so good. They've got the greatest defensive record we'll ever see at championship level, yet still aren't in the top 2. And that just goes to show how unremarkable they are in attack. It's 11 goals in their last 11, which isn't great, doesn't sound terrible, but that 11 goals in 11 is massively stat padded by a 5-0 win over Plymouth halfway in between there. So otherwise, they failed to score in 6 of their last 10 games. But that's Burnley for you. And we all know what they're about by now. That defensive record is essentially propping up their top 2 push. And right now, they've still got as good a chance as anyone, because it's a big weekend for Burnley. Of course, Leeds and Sheffield United playing each other on Monday night. So at least one of them is dropping points. And with Burnley, they need to make sure they take advantage of that, because this is a rare opportunity to make some ground on at least one of those 2, isn't it?
It's a case of how are your nerves sort of thing. Obviously, I think it helps that Burnley are playing on the Friday, so they don't have the burden of knowing what the Leeds result is, and obviously Sheffield United. This probably just does suit Burnley a little bit more. I mean, Scott Parker spoke before about feeling anxiety amongst the Turf Moor crowd, and that could play into it a little bit, but I think it is worth pointing out that they are creating or getting into good areas, Burnley, but the moments just aren't really falling. So if you look at Lara Foster over the past couple of games, he's missed some big chances that could have really turned games in their favour quite significantly. I'm not going to single him out because there will be others, but we're talking about big moments. There's a couple from him that do spring to mind straight away. So yes, they do need to prop up their score. It's a very average attack in terms of the numbers they produce, but it shouldn't be because of the quality of players that they do have. And yes, we can talk until we're blue in the face about Parker Ball, and whilst we are reaping the awards defensively from clean sheets going forwards, that's going to be what lets them down. I know it's a very obvious thing to say, but Sheffield United and Leeds do have very good defensive records in their own right. Nowhere near as good as Burnley's, but they have incredible attacks as well, incredibly efficient attacks. And that's what Burnley don't have. And that, as I say, could be the thing that lets them down come the end of the season.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Scott Parker will be saying his side won't be paying too much attention to the game on Monday night, when actually they probably are. They'll definitely be keeping at least one eye on it, won't they? And I think from Burnley's perspective, I look at it like this. I struggle to foresee Leeds not getting automatically promoted. at this stage. So I think it's Sheffield United that Burnley have to be focusing on. And to close the gap to just 2 points on them will be massive, particularly because they still have to play each other, by the way, later on in the season. So there's still a long way to go, but they have to be taking this chance because the gap has quietly grown to 5 points over the last few games, which with 13 games to go is a fairly sizable gap. But, they've got the chance here to narrow it down. And this would be a huge missed opportunity of a weekend if they don't close it. However, Sheffield Wednesday are a tricky side to face, aren't they? They're one of only 3 teams to have won more points away than at home this season. One of the other sides is, ironically, Burnley. So there's every chance they cause Scott Parker's side a fair few problems here, Justin.
Yeah, and I think you really do have to bring that into the discussion here. I mean, Wednesday's approach to this game will actually be very interesting, whether or not they will get controlled by Burnley or they will allow Burnley to sort of come amongst the chaos a little bit. Wednesdays, as you say, their away form is typically very good. They've actually got the 5th best away record in the Championship. And I think, what lends to the chaos is the fact that you look at the goals for and against away from home for Wednesday. One of the top scorers away from home, but also one of the top conceders as well. So, it could make things uncomfortable for Burnley, or Burnley could very much control the game. I think it's going to be one of them where the game plan is going to be very important from Danny Rule. But what I will say about Danny Rule is he's very reactive. He's very, very, very good at responding in game. We've seen time and time again this season that games have flipped on the flip of a coin. And his ability to understand and adapt his team tactically in game is just brilliant. And I think that's why there's an element of chaos in those games, because sometimes they'll go behind and they'll come back and they leave it late, get goals back late in games. So yeah, this is a really, really awkward one. And I spoke about the anxiousness and nervousness that Turf Moor can feel. I think if any team's going to come and really, really make that feeling worse, it could possibly be a Wednesday.
Well, they've definitely got their eyes set firmly on the top 6, haven't they? And it's so tight in the race for the playoffs that they can't really afford many slip-ups either. So they'll want to get at Burnley, get in their faces like they so often do, and make it a very uncomfortable night for Burnley later tonight. The thing is, Justin, I don't think this will play into the mindset of the players, but we have got to keep in mind they would be doing Sheffield United a favour here, wouldn't they, if they managed to get a result? So it's, from a Wednesday fan perspective, you're a bit like, well, it's not necessarily the worst thing if we don't get a result.
Yeah, it's a catch-22, isn't it? But I think, a draw would probably suit Wednesday. You go to a tough away ground, get a result, you get a draw, breathes a bit of confidence into you. Obviously, Leeds can beat Sheffield United, and that gap to the top 2 is closed by 4 points from a Burnley point of view. So that, a draw, I think, would be a big win for Wednesday fans. But, I don't think any fan would. I think getting 3 points away at Burnley, scoring the first goal against Burnley in what feels like literally since last year, it's. I think that would be a lot sweeter than perhaps Sheffield United, doing a favour for them, if you like.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on there. But now, ladies and gents, it's time for our second tier bet builder with SBK. And with SBK, you don't just get an ordinary bet builder. They offer you fresh legs too. What's fresh legs, I hear you ask? No, it's nothing to do with Justin after he's been shaving his legs. Stop bringing it up all the time, Justin. No one cares. Fresh legs keeps you in the game, because if you have a bet on a player to score, have a shot on target, or to be carded, if they get subbed off, the bet rolls over onto the player who replaces them. And SBK are the only bookmaker offering this on every championship game this season, meaning there really is no better place to bet on the second tier. So sign up for SBK right now and join the thousands of people already taking advantage of fresh legs every weekend. On top of that, SBK are offering a massive 25% boost on any bet builder with 4 or more selections for Burnley v Sheffield Wednesday. Max stake £10 and T's and C's apply. So every Friday we make our own bet builder with 4 selections all relating to our game of the week. So that's 2 for Justin and 2 for moi. Justin, what is your first selection?
I've gone with Sheffield Wednesday to have over 9.5 shots. Considering Burnley's defensive success, this one might be a risk, but I think it's worth taking when looking at Sheffield Wednesday's ability to test their opposition. last 6 games specifically has provided over 9.5 shots from a Wednesday point of view. But in fact, throughout the entire season, there have only been 10 games where Wednesday have failed to have over 9.5 shots. They are prolific shot takers. So, like we've been talking about already, I think if there's going to be a team that really does test Burnley's defensive resolve, it's going to be this Wednesday team.
Yeah, well, to just add on that, unsurprisingly, Burnley don't concede many shots, but they probably give away more at Turf Moor than you would expect. Middlesbrough, Stoke and Sunderland have all had over 9.5 shots in Burnley's last 8 games at Turf Moor. Hull and Watford were only 1 shot off as well. But more importantly, you were talking about Wednesday and their shot taking ability just then, Justin, but they've only failed to have over 9.5 shots in just 2 of their last 21 league games. And when I checked earlier, it was 13-10 for Wednesday to have over 9.5 shots. So this seems like a good value pick to me to kick off the old BB. My first selection for the BB is Max Lowe to be carded. It's Ryan's card pick of the week. And look, we'll be honest, we've struggled with our bet builders recently, but one thing that's not struggled is Ryan's card pick of the week, baby. They have been flying in recently, but I faced a bit of a problem this week, Justin. The referee for this is Stephen Martin. Old Stephen, he has a habit of getting a bit carried away when it comes to games. In his last 5 games, he's given out 5 cards or more on 3 occasions, which, look, it's great for a card selection, but we've got Burnley and Sheffield Wednesday here, who are 2 of the more well-behaved teams in the Championship. So I was struggling for a pick initially, but then I noticed something, Justin. In Burnley's last 5 games, an opposition centre-half has been carded 5 times. So with that being said, it's a straight choice between Michael Hickway and Max Lowe. And Max Lowe is much bigger odds to be carded out of the 2 of them. So, and keep in mind, he's a left-back playing at centre-back. So he was the choice for me here. What have you got to say about that, Justin?
Look, your card picks have been coming in. I think also you've got to consider the fact that if Marcus Edwards starts, I know Max Lowe isn't playing wing back, but left centre half could take a lot of responsibility in marking and stopping Marcus Edwards, who's a very tricky player, as we well know. That could enhance the likelihood of Max Lowe taking a booking there. So yeah, I'm not going to bow down to this one. Your card picks have landed. You know your cards. You know your opposition players who are going to get carded. You know your referees. You do your research, Ryan. I respect that.
Cheers, bruv. Plus, it was my birthday recently, hasn't it? So I'm used to cards, aren't I? But just a reminder, if Max Lowe were to get subbed off after 5 seconds for, I don't know, a chipped nail or something, with SBK, this bet would carry over onto the player coming on. So there's no need to fret with SBK. Justin, what's your next selection? Didn't see this one coming.
Oh, it's under 2.5 goals. Burnley clean sheets? What? Look, despite the chaos that Wednesday bring, under 2.5 goals does give us a bit of a cushion, given Burnley's very, very healthy clean sheet record and ability to control games. I think this one does really, really depend on what the most likely scenario is here. Is it going to be a low-scoring game where Wednesday do pull off the unthinkable, i.e., break down that Burnley wall, or are Burnley going to win this comfortably? There have only been 2.5 goals in just 6 Burnley games all season. 3 of them were big wins for Burnley. So, yes, unless this is going to be a 5-0 win, as we have seen on 3 other occasions for Burnley, just can't foresee this one being, over 2.5 goals.
Yeah, I think you spent about 30 seconds too long explaining that selection, Justin. All you had to say was, this game involves Burnley. That's it. That's all you had to say, really. Yep, exactly. Everyone knows what Burnley are like at this stage, don't they? So, yeah, under 2.5 goals seems a very, very safe pick whenever it comes to a bet builder involving Burnley. And the final selection for this bet builder is Burnley to win. Now, usually I would approach a game like this with a bit of pessimism because Burnley so often have struggled to break teams down at Turf Moor. They've won more points away than they have at home. And that's because teams often go there and are happy to settle for a point. And you've got Wednesday coming here who have the best away record in the Championship outside of the top 4 teams. So it looks like a recipe for a frustrating night for Burnley. But Wednesday aren't the kind of side who will sit back. Their games, as we've alluded to, are absolute carnage. Their games have seen the joint highest number of goals this season, and if they do approach this game the way I would expect, I think Burnley will just pick them apart. They'll want it to be a bit of a basketball game, but Burnley will be like, nah, we're all right, mate. We only care about clean sheets. So I can see Wednesday playing right into Scott Parker's hands, and Burnley get a crucial 3 points to keep the pressure on the top two, Justin.
I think this all depends on whether Burnley feel pressure or not in terms of having to go for that win. I'd be very confident in saying this game would at least be a draw. Obviously, with Burnley's 0-0 record of late, they have been very sort of regular, and also their clean sheet. So you do point toward a Burnley double chance, but I think we're getting to a point where Burnley games are needing to become a little bit must-win. That might add the pressure a little bit, and that might, I wouldn't say force Scott Parker into allowing his team to come out of their comfort zone a little bit, but I think the game plan might switch towards not attack first mentality, but we need this 3 points. We need to close the gap on the top two quickly, otherwise it's going to be playoffs for us. So I think with that in mind, I think a Burnley win, probably a safer bet there.
So our bet builder for Burnley versus Sheffield Wednesday looks like this. Sheffield Wednesday to have over 9.5 shots. Max Low to be carded under 2.5 goals, and Burnley to win. And a £10 stake on that bet builder returns £190 thanks to SBK's 25% boost. But remember, if you don't fancy our bet builder with SBK, you can create your own bet builder from a range of markets. T's and C's apply, over 18s only, and please do gamble responsibly. Justin, we'll take a quick break. After that, we'll make some more predictions ahead of this weekend. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast, and it's now time for us to have a look ahead to the weekend. So in each preview episode of the Second Tier, Justin and I will each pick a banker, a team we think is guaranteed to win this coming weekend, as well as an outsider. So someone we think is going to win, but is bigger odds with our friends at SBK than their opponent. We're tracking how we do as the season goes on. It's 1 point for a correct banker, 2 points for an outsider. Whoever loses has to do a forfeit, which is to be a mascot at an EFL game next season. The current scores are 34-25 to Justin Peach. I got my banker correct last weekend, but Justin's outsider of Coventry to win away at Sheffield Wednesday came in. James Beadle really buggered me last week, Justin.
Oh, yes, that Lampard effect doing me good, I tell you. And yeah, that game was destined for at least a draw. And then obviously the footballing gods were actually, no, Justin, you deserve this. That's what they said to me. That's what they whispered in my ear on Friday night. And it came in.
Was that Frank Lampard whispering in your ear, was it? He was just saying repeatedly, the Lampard effect.
He's like, yeah, Justin, don't worry about it, mate. You deserve this. But no, seriously, you deserve this.
Yeah. Good. Like that. Let's get things on the way, Justin, with your banker for this weekend. What have you got for us, big boy?
I've gone with Sunderland to win at home to Hull on Saturday lunchtime. Hull's away record has been pretty nifty recently, and Sunderland's performance against teams in the bottom six of late haven't been at their best. That being said, Black Cats at home, I would argue as well, it was a good performance against Leeds on Monday, and they were undone right at the other end of some tight moments that genuinely, I think on another day, would have gone their way. We're talking about set pieces. We're talking about the right timing of substitutions from Lebris as well. But I think they'll be hungry to put things right here. In addition to that, Hull are winless in their last three. They did lose to Burnley in their last away game, which I think could give us an indicator how this game go. Romain Mundle was on the bench for Sunderland, obviously on Monday, could get action here. Patrick Roberts, I should say, and Wilson Isidore as well are in really good form, along with Enzo Lefebvre, possibly being moved into the middle if Romain Mundle is to start. A lot of variables there, but I just think Sunderland are in a better position than Hull. Their performance against Leeds on Monday was actually pretty good, and I think again against another team they probably would have got 3 points there. So I'll go with Sunderland to win at home to Hull.
Yeah, I think there'll be plenty of other teams keeping an eye on this game from across the Championship because, of course, Sunderland very much in that race for the top two, and you've got Hull who are very much in the relegation battle right now. So there'll be plenty of neutrals who are just keeping an eye on this one. But look, this is interesting because you've got Sunderland here who have only won one of their last 4 games at the Stadium of Light. Of course, drop points to Plymouth and Watford in that time. And then you've got Hull, who, as you mentioned there, Justin, have a pretty decent away record. In fact, they're one of the 3 teams who have won more points away than at home this season. So these factors coming together, does maybe a bit uneasy when it comes to backing a Sunderland win this weekend.
Yeah, I get what you mean. They're away from home. Hull. It's hard to pinpoint. I don't know if it's just the fact that their home form is so bad it does make their away form look good. They sit 11th for points away from home this season, which is pretty good. If their home form was actually as good, they'd be very mid-table or pushing for a playoff place, but it's not. But I do think this maybe does emphasise the point that I think standard of away teams / performances across the division, I think it's just a bit poor. They've won 5 games away from home, which just isn't mind-blowing. And if that puts you 11th in the table for points accrued away from home this season, then I do think the standards in away games is just poor. So yes, Hull are better away from home than they are at home, but that doesn't mean they're going to be better than Sunderland here. So it's an interesting stat to be worried about. But against the might of Sunderland, I don't think so.
They've won 3 of the last 4 on their travels. Yeah. The only team they haven't beaten in that time is Burnley. So they have the potential to cause a bit of an upset here. So be cautious if you're looking at this one for the weekend, ladies and gents. That's what I would say. Let's go to my banker for this weekend. It's Watford to win at home to Luton on Sunday lunchtime in the M1 derby. Yes, that's right. The M1 derby, one of the most fiercest derbies in the Football League, actually. These two absolutely despise each other, more than I think a lot of people outside of the Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire region realise, because this is a really bitter derby, which was only made more intense by these two not playing each other for several years, but they've played each other several times in the past few seasons now. However, if Luton's season is anything to go by, they might not be playing each other again next season, because it has been a disastrous season for the Hatters. And every time you think, surely it's going to improve for them, it doesn't. They seem to find a new low to stoop to, and they're now rock bottom of the league. They can't go much lower than that. But they are also in the midst of their worst form of the season. Just 3 points won in their last 11 games. And they've only won 1 point on the road since mid-September. It is an astonishingly bad record, and Watford will be relishing the chance to inflict even more pain on their big rivals. They've by no means been in great form themselves, particularly at Vicarage Road. They've lost their last 5 at home, despite previously being unbeaten for 9 months on home turf. It's very strange. But Watford did get an impressive win away at Middlesbrough last time out. It wasn't even really a smash and grab. They were genuinely the better side in that game in terms of the balance of chances. So they'll be hoping that's a corner turned. And this derby game is a chance to build some momentum and keep their playoff hopes alive. So I am backing a Watford win in the M1 derby, Justin.
Yeah, and Luton's away record at Vicarage Road isn't particularly great either. Do you think you've got to go back to the early 90s for their last win in the league? Very long time. Literally a generational result if Luton were to get something here. But I just think Watford haven't been in great licks recently, but they have sort of steadied their form a little bit. And Luton, painfully below average. Actually, I think average is a very forgiving and generous statement to link with Luton. They cannot get going. They miss too many big chances. Defensively, they give too many away. You look at set piece defending is generally awful. What Plymouth scored from a set piece in midweek against Luton. They are disorganised. They lack leaders. It's just a shit show, basically. I think this is the biggest way to describe it, which incredibly, Watford have probably come under that description more often than Luton have in recent years, based on the managerial merry-go-rounds they go through, but they are benefiting a lot from Tom Cleverley. And I think if you go back to the reverse fixture earlier on in the season, Tom Cleverley got the game plan wrong. Don't think he will allow that to happen again. He will be up for this. He will want this. And I think he will need to respond as well, because you look at the approach to that game, bad approach from Cleverley. He won't put that right. Watford, again, it's very hard to see past them going into this one.
Got to be said as well, I know people get a bit caught up in the numbers when it comes to derby games, but no team has managed to do the league double in this particular derby since the 80s. So it'd be quite a turner for the Bucks if Luton were to turn around and do that in this one. But I think surely Watford have got to be looking at this, and even if you take out the form goes out the window in a derby narrative, then surely Watford have got to be looking at this and be thinking Luton are just so painfully out of form right now that this has to be 3 points on the board for them, and as I say, massively keep up their playoff hopes. What do you think about the term the M1 derby, Justin? Because I know it's not one that's fondly thought of by people in Luton and Watford. It's a bit of a vague term, isn't it? Because there's plenty of teams right next to the M1.
Yeah, there's Northampton, there's Milton Keynes, Derby, Leicester, Nottingham, Leeds, Barnsley, Wakefield, loads. Yeah, you're right. A lot of places on the M1.
What's your big road. What's your favourite M1 service station?
Newport Pagnell. Big fan of it. Oh, really? Yeah, big fan of it. It's when I had an electric car, I had to stop there if I was ever driving into London. Good place to stop. It's not too complicated, but it's not Toddington either. Toddington's a dive.
Oh, no, I'm not a Toddington fan. I'm a Watford Gap fan. I like Watford Gap. It's a good service station. That's the one I usually stop at because it's sort of halfway between Derby and London whenever I'm driving down to the big schmuck. Plus, you've got loads of great options there as well.
Yeah, it's true. But I imagine this is why Watford and Luton fans aren't too keen on the term M1 Derby, because look at what's happened. One of the biggest games of this season, and we're talking about service stations, Ryan.
I struggle to see the issue here, personally. But there are mine and Justin's two bankers for the weekend. Every week, we combine these two selections with a bet on the full-time results of our game of the weekend to create our own second-tier featured multiple with SBK. And as per usual, we're also including one of our outsiders, which we put to you, the listener, to decide who else gets included. So this week, we're going for Burnley, Sunderland, Watford, and winning by a vote of 51% to 49%. Is my outsider of Plymouth. That's how close it was, Justin.
How? It's Blackburn. They've won 2 games in a row. They've kept 2 clean sheets in a row.
Even when I pick Plymouth as my outsider, people still just don't want to get on board with you, Justin, which I don't know what that says, because obviously you're winning for this season.
Last week. I don't know why I'm offended by this.
Well, it's fine. It's fine. You know, the people just realise who the real goat is. But there we go. So the second tier featured multiple this weekend is Burnley, Sunderland, Watford, and Plymouth, all to win. And a £10 bet on our accumulator returns £212 thanks to SBK's 20% boost. T's and C's apply, over 18s only, and please do gamble responsibly. Justin, let's get on to my outsider and why I've picked Plymouth to win at home to Cardiff on Saturday lunchtime. Yeah. Have either of us backed Plymouth to win at any point in this season? I'm not sure.
This might be first.
If we have, it's not happened very often, has it? But this is a big game. A relegation 6-pointer, really. Plymouth, 23rd. Cardiff sit 20th. And Plymouth would go level on points with Cardiff if they win. And I tell you what, they'll fancy their chances of doing just that. We all know they're just shocking away, but home park is where the magic happens. They've won their last 3 at home. Oh, they've won the last 3, but I bet they weren't against anyone any good, were they? Try the champions of England, actually, the soon-to-be champions of England. They've also beaten 6th place West Brom and smashed Millwall 5-1. They love playing at home park, and basically any chance Plymouth have of staying up this season is based purely on their results at home at this stage. And they'll be looking to get 3 points against Cardiff. And this is a Cardiff side who have looked worryingly poor over the last 3 games. They took a 7-0 tanking at Leeds, lost at Portsmouth, and then managed to rescue a point in the dying minutes at home to Bristol City. If Plymouth play anything like they have done in their last few home games, they are more than capable of doing a number on Cardiff. So, not something I've said very often this season. I fancy a Plymouth win this weekend.
Do you know what I think I do as well? I'm just looking at Cardiff's away record. It is really bad. They've won one game away all season, which is, I think, is a pretty significant stat there from a Cardiff perspective. And you look at the last 6 games, they've lost to Oxford, they've lost to Portsmouth, and they lost 7-0 to Leeds. That Leeds hammering is, I think, was actually probably more telling them than what it was, because there was a really mixing approaches to their game from the players and Omar Ritza, where Leeds exploited. Okay, Plymouth aren't going to possess the amount of quality that Leeds do, or perhaps even the same amount of quality like Portsmouth did in their Cardiff's last away game. But if you look at how things have been going for Plymouth at home, there's a belief around the ground, and that's a dangerous thing for opposition. Very, very dangerous thing. You look at how well and how, I wouldn't say comfortable they were against Liverpool in the FA Cup, but at no point did I think, as soon as Plymouth went ahead, did I think they were going to let that go. They defended like Trojans. It was brilliant, and they're going to take that approach into every game. They did that against Luton in midweek, defended like Trojans, and got back into it despite having just 3 shots on goal. It is a very, very big thing mentality at home park, and I think that's going to really, really suit them going against Cardiff.
Yeah, well, they're just a completely different side at home, aren't they? Even under Rooney, to be fair, they were a different side. I think the home crowd really does play a big part when it comes to Plymouth, and that belief has been so much more evident since Miron Muslic has come in. Yes, they did get smashed 5-0 at home by Burnley, but since then they've been a completely different side, and put very simply, they've beaten teams a lot stronger than Cardiff at home park in the last 3 outings, haven't they? So they've got every opportunity here to get a massive 3 points and potentially be outside of the bottom 3 by the end of this weekend, Justin. Sorry, I'm getting emotional talking about it. So that would be one hell of a turn for the books for Plymouth, wouldn't it, considering not too long ago they were looking near enough dead and buried. Mm-hmm. They're basically in the grave, weren't they? They still need to do the burying stuff. But yeah, it was looking pretty grim for Plymouth, and now they've got a great chance here to be in a great position at the end of the weekend. Justin, let's go on to your outsider. It's not been selected for the second tier featured accumulator this weekend, but nonetheless, what have you gone for? Who do you expect you to do the business this weekend?
I've gone with Blackburn to win away at Swansea on Saturday afternoon. You're all fools for not picking it, because Blackburn have looked brilliant under David Lowe, who's the caretaker in charge right now after John Eustace's acrimonious departure to Derby County. But if you look at the last couple of games, especially under David Lowe, they've been clinical performances both ends of the pitch. And they've been very effective in both their boxes. Maktar Gay's form has been great over the last few weeks. He's now got 11 goal contributions this season. Despite only scoring 5 goals, his presence in that Blackburn team is so, so important. And his performances actually since the Coventry defeat in January have, in my opinion, been very good, very effective. Tyrese Dolan has picked up as well. And for me, it just feels like the players are in a very good moment of form. I think you've got a good coach in there as who's the current guardian of Blackburn at the moment, and I think he's just playing to their strengths, and that's what all caretakers do. That's why if you've got a good experienced caretaker manager, that's what they will do. And we're seeing that with Blackburn. They are not stepping out of their comfort zone. They're doing what they're good at, and it's punishing teams. Yes, as well. I think it's very important to consider that both teams are managerless at the moment. I think a big thing as well is Swansea's pitch is fucking awful. Is it awful? I think that's going to suit Blackburn more. And I know it's quite public to mention the quality of the pitch, but if you've got a team like Swansea who traditionally will want to play through the thirds, and Blackburn who are better off mixing up their game, I think this will suit Blackburn a lot more.
The battle of the caretakers. That's quite the billing, isn't it? I like that. Got to be said, it's Alan Sheehan who's in charge of this one for Swansea. Very handsome man. As far as anyone who's in charge of a football team in the Championship this season, of course, Rob Edwards is the pinnacle when it comes to handsome managers, but Alan Sheehan is very much a contender in his own right. You were just talking about David Lowe there, Justin. He is set to be in charge of this one once again, but it appears like he won't be in charge for much longer, because it seems as if Blackburn are close to deciding on their new manager. They reportedly had interviews in London yesterday. Some of the names thought to be in the mix include Aitor Karanka, Valerian Ismail, and Jurgen Klopp's former assistant Pep Lijnders. Any of them take your fancy, Justin?
I'm just going to throw it out there. Who do you think I'm taking a fancy of?
Is it Valerian Ismail?
Fucking is Valerian Ismail.
You're a big Valerian Ismail fan, aren't you?
I am, and despite his Watford spell not being great and his West Brom spell being underwhelming, I love Big Val. I love his football, and I think we did see some adaptation at Watford to not being so direct. I think we even saw it at West Brom, to be honest with you. So yes, there's a bit of progress there. It's just whether or not he is actually a good manager. I just love the possibility of him having Maktar Gay as his number 9. He's got Emmanuel Dennis as well. And obviously Corley Woodrow, who he worked with Woodrow at Barnsley, and he probably worked with Emmanuel Dennis with Watford as well. So they're two forward players who he's familiar with, and he's got the chaos that is Maktar Gay. That for me just spells brilliance. Pep Lijnders is an interesting link, because obviously there's that Jurgen Klopp factor, but he was pretty poor it was RB Salzburg, wasn't it? So, yeah, I would go with Valerian Ismail out of those three. Aitor Karanka, you will get clean sheets, but again, I just don't know whether his sell-by date is past us.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair comment to make, Justin. I'd be interested if they did go for Lijnders, considering he just seems to be linked with the vast majority of Championship jobs nowadays. So it'd be good to see him actually, get exposed at this level. I think Ismail, one player you didn't mention there, who he also worked with at Barnsley, was Callum Britton, of course, as well,
yes,
who I absolutely love as a player. But I think Ismail and Blackburn would be a good pairing, because that's the kind of club I think Valerian Ismail excels in. One where they're not necessarily the most technically gifted team out of, the kind of area that they're battling in, but he will get that team playing to their strengths, essentially. Mm-hmm. So that's why I think he could work there, and West Brom and Watford fans may turn their nose up at him after the jobs he did there, but I think he's still got something to give at this level, because with Barnsley, he worked wonders, didn't he? And I see no reason why he couldn't do the same thing at Blackburn. So I'd personally be vouching for him as well, although I would be intrigued if they did go for Pep Lijnders as well. So yeah, I'm just fascinated in general to see who Blackburn and Swansea, for that matter, both go for as their next managers. Right, those have been our predictions for the weekend. And you know what time it is now, ladies and gents.
All right. Settle down, you lot. It's time for the Craig Bryson pub quiz.
Yes, it is, Mr. Barman. It's the Craig Bryson pub quiz, and this is how it works. I'm going to give Justin 6 clues about a Championship player, past or present, each more revealing than the last, and he simply has to guess who it is. They must have made over 200 Championship appearances in their career, and don't forget, the Dexter Blackstock rule is in play. Justin, would you like your first clue, please?
Yes, please.
Good. Your first clue is this. I have 294 appearances at Championship level, scoring 40 goals.
294 appearances and 40 goals. That sounds like a winger, a prolific winger. Helder Costa.
Helder Costa? He's not made 294 appearances at Championship level, has he? Come on now. But it's good to hear him mentioned, as always. Your next clue is this, Justin Peach. I made my professional debut in 2002 against CSKA Sofia in the UEFA Cup, while playing for Blackburn Rovers.
While playing for Blackburn? Paul Gallagher.
It's not Paul Gallagher.
Oh.
But good to hear him mentioned. I think I mentioned him last week, actually.
You did?
Yeah, there you go. Paul Gallagher getting all the mentions. Your next clue, Justin, this is your third clue. I have 25 caps for the Guyanan national team.
Oh, okay. Okay. Seems like a cool guy. 2002 debut. My knowledge of Guyanan footballers is very limited. He's got to be a winger, though. I'll go next clue.
Okay, that's fine. Fourth clue. I've played for 6 clubs at Championship level. Most of my appearances, though, were for Bolton Wanderers. That was an interesting noise.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, this is tricky. Played for most appearances for Bolton. 6 different clubs at Championship level. I'm stuck on that Guyanan. Yeah, I'm stuck on that, and then I shouldn't be, because I don't think that's any context, because international football isn't really relevant here. I've got to go next clue.
Fifth clue, ladies and gents. We get towards the latter stages. Fifth clue is this. I only retired from football in 2023 at the age of 41, where I was player manager at Macclesfield.
I got it. I've got it. It's Neil Dans.
Sorry, ladies and gents, you may have heard a slight interruption there. That was me hitting myself in the head with a notepad. It is Neil Dans. You're absolutely right. How the hell did you get it from that?
It was as soon as you started saying that next clue, I was like, oh no, it's Neil Dans. I know a lot about Neil Dance's career. I know a hell of a lot about his career. He's one of them players that I've always liked. He's always been a very effective player. He played for a lot for Birmingham. He was at Blackburn. He went to Colchester. He was really good at Colchester. Then signed for Birmingham
as well.
Yeah, and Leicester.
Leicester. Played for a few clubs. I always liked Neil Dans as well. I was hoping you wouldn't get that one. I was quite hopeful heading into the end that you just had absolutely no idea. But yeah, that's annoying. Quite sad now.
And now his son plays for Stoke. No, Sunderland.
Do you want to know the 6th clue, Justin?
Yeah, always nice.
I have a son who currently plays in the Championship.
They're vague clues, they are. They are vague.
Well, I think how many bloody players are there who used to have a son, who still has a son, who plays in the Championship? You know, there aren't many who have played that many games at Championship level and also have a son who still plays in the Championship. So that's a shame. But Neil Dans, always good to hear him mention, isn't it?
Yeah, 2 first names as well. Incredible stuff.
Yeah, nearly. Dans isn't really a first name.
Depends if there's 1 or 2 of you, isn't it?
Yeah, if it's a plural. of the dance. But there we go, ladies and gents. That's been the Craig Bryson Pub Quiz, and this has been the second tier preview show brought to you by SBK as we look ahead towards a huge weekend of Championship action, and we'll be back again on Sunday to talk about that huge weekend of Championship action. So we look forward to seeing you then for that. But this has been the second tier podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.